Welcome, students of mathematics in the modern world. So we are now on the second part on the discussion of chapter 2, problem solving. So in this part, we will be discussing strategies for solving pattern problems. So you most likely have experienced this in some exams, in entrance exams. You would most likely have seen nonverbal reasoning. You would Those who would be taking the civil service exams would most likely also encounter situations or questions like this. So hopefully this discussion in solving pattern problems will help you once you take that exam. But more generally, this will help you in your logical and analytical thinking on how we can identify patterns and how um, we're basically doing here inductive reasoning. This is an application of inductive reasoning. So we will now be putting that to test. So we will try to predict what comes next in a sequence of things. So we will have sequence of numbers, sequence of images, sequence of words, and so on. So the steps or the strategies that you can employ in solving pattern problems is first, you need, of course, to observe carefully your pattern or your sequence. So notice changes in whatever you can observe. So for example, shape, size, color, or number. So look carefully into those. Then try to identify what are the things that repeat and what are the things that are distinct, what are the things that are common in things in your pattern, in your sequence. So there might be a repetition, commonalities, and differences that will help us identify what really is the pattern. And then once you have that, again, we make a conjecture in our inductive reasoning. We try to generalize a rule. So try to create that rule in your mind and then apply that for the next instance in your prediction. There are cases in here wherein there is a missing thing that is inside the pattern, not at the end, but somewhere in the middle, might also be in the beginning. So in that case, you also need to make sure that the rule that you create, your conjecture, would hold true if whatever answer you would be filling in for that missing part. And then, of course, with that, you will be able to predict or extend the pattern. So once the rule is clear, you'll be able to determine the next terms or figures. So let's have our first example. So we have these numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. For those of you who are comfortable with numbers, you would most likely see already what's the pattern in here. So in our previous lesson in inductive reasoning, we had the odd numbers. So you would most likely notice or observe that these are odd numbers. And so the next number here should be 13. Now, another way that we can deal with this is by getting the differences of each number. So the difference of 1 and 3 is 2. Difference between 3 and 5 is also 2. 7 minus 5 is also 2. 9 minus 7 is 2. 11 minus 9 is 2. So the difference that we should expect between 11 and the next number is 2. So if we do 11 plus 2, then we get 13. So either you observe it as a sequence of odd numbers, or you can look at the common differences. Then what you would observe or what you would predict as the missing or the next number in the sequence is 13. Now let's have this example: 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24. So again, for those who are comfortable with numbers, would automatically be able to say that these are multiples of 4. So if these are multiples of 4, then what should come next here is we should have 28. And because it is multiples of 4, the rule of getting the common difference would also apply. So if we do 8 minus 4, that's 4. 12 minus 8, that's 4. 16 minus 12 is 4. 20 minus 16 is 4. 24 minus 20 is 4. So the difference between 24 and the next number should also be 4. So if we do 24 plus 4, then we get 28. Now let's have these numbers: 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25. So we can do again the differences. So if we get the difference of 4 and 1, that's 3. Difference of 9 and 4, that is 5. 16 minus 9, that's 7. 25 minus 16, that is 9. So just in case you do not see the pattern yet in these differences, try getting the differences also of the differences. So if you do 5 minus 3, that's 2. 7 minus 5, that's 2. 9 minus 7 is 2. Okay, so with this now, the second set of differences, there is a clear pattern. It is repeating. So what we would expect, the next difference here will also be 2. Basically, this is the one that we had in our first example. So the next difference here should be 11. So the difference between 25 and the next number is 11. So 25 plus 11, so we should get here 36. So again, for those who are comfortable with numbers and math, you might be able to notice that these are the perfect squares. So this is 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, and 36, of course, is 6 squared. So either you see it as perfect squares or you get the common differences, then we will get the same number, which is 36. All right, now, so we have these sequence 3, 5, 9, 15, 23, 33, and then we need to find what comes next. So again, let's apply the rule of getting the common differences. So 5 minus 3, this is 2. 9 minus 5, this is 4. 15 minus 9, that is 6. 23 minus 15, that is 8. 33 minus 23, that is 10. So just in case you do not see the pattern yet in these differences, you can get again the differences. So they all are have difference 2. So the next one here should be 2. So 10 plus 2, so this should be 12. So 33 plus 12, so what should come next here is 45. So now question is, do you need to do the third set of difference or the second set of differences? You actually don't need to find these. If from that alone you're already able to see the pattern 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, you would already say that, oh, the next difference should be 12. So 33 plus 12 is equal to 45. So we only do the second difference if still it's not clear on the first difference what the pattern is. Sometimes, rare cases, that there is even a need to get a third set of differences. So but if after the third set of differences it's still not clear what's happening, then most likely using the difference is not a good way to find out what is the pattern. So you might have to explore some other patterns, which we will have an example of. All right, so let's have this next sequence: 2, 7, negative 3, 2, negative 8, negative 3, negative 13, negative 8, and then what comes next? So this really looks so random. But if we again apply the rule of differences, then we might be able to get something. Let's check. 7 minus 2, that's equal to 5. Negative 3 minus 7, so just to be clear, that's negative 3 minus 7. This is negative 10. 2 minus 3, so 2 or 2 minus negative 3, that is, so that's like 2 plus 3, so that will be 5. Then we have negative 8 minus 2, so that's again negative 10. Negative 3 minus negative 8, that is positive 5. Negative 13 minus negative 3, that's negative 10. and negative 8 minus negative 13, that's again positive 5. So now we have a clear pattern on our differences: 5, negative 10, 5, negative 10, 5, negative 10, and 5, 5. So it's an alternating difference. The next difference here should be negative 10. So negative 8 plus negative 10, what we should get here is negative 18. So that's the um, logical next number in the sequence. All right, so you should already know what this sequence is: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. So this is the Fibonacci sequence. And if we see here, if we try to do the difference, so we have this is 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and then 8. So the difference here is just the same numbers that we have here. So we would expect that the difference here would also be 13. So 21 plus 13. So we get there 34, which is how we did our Fibonacci sequence. So you can just immediately recognize that to get the next number, you add the two previous number. You can do that, or you can do this difference, and you would also get the same sequence. Okay, next we have the sequence 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, 13, 19. Okay, so I want you to spend a couple of seconds and then try to determine what's the pattern in here. Try doing it yourself. Try doing the difference, or maybe you can do another approach. Okay, so let's try doing the difference. If we do difference, then we get 0, 0, that's 1, that's 1, that's 1, that's 2, 3, that's 4, that's 6. Oh, okay, we have these numbers are the same numbers that we have in here. So the next number here, the next difference should be 9. So we should get 19 plus 9, that is 28. Or another way of thinking of this, what we do to get a succeeding number, what we do is add two numbers but skip one in the middle. What do I mean? So let me first erase everything. Okay, now let's have to get 2, what you can add is 1 and 1, but we have 3 ones here, so we don't know which ones to choose. Now to get 3, we can add 2 and 1, but again there are 3 ones there, so we don't know which to choose. Now to get 4, what we can add is 3 and 1. So basically we skip the middle term, which is 2, and if we do if we go back to get 3, we can get 2 and 1. And then to get 2, we can add 1 and 1. So again, to get 4, we add 3 and 1. To get 6, we add 2 and 4. To get 9, we add 3 and 6. To get 13, we add 4 and 9. To get 19, we add 6 and 13. So the next number is the sum of 9 and 19. So again, that will be 28. So if you notice in our Fibonacci sequence, the um, recursive formula for the Fibonacci sequence, that was Fn is equal to Fn minus 1 plus Fn minus 2. Basically, the nth Fibonacci term is the sum of the n minus 1th and n minus 2th Fibonacci terms, or add the two previous numbers to get your next number. However, this one, this is actually called the Narayana's cow sequence. So I will be using capital N. So to get the nth number, you will add the previous number and then skip one of the numbers. So what you will have is n minus 1 plus n minus 3. So you get you add two numbers preceding that, immediately preceding, but skip the one in the middle. So that is the n minus 1 and the n minus 3 added together. So again, this is called the Narayana's cow sequence. All right, next we have this numbers 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21. Okay, that seems to be fairly easy. Let's try getting the difference. So this will have a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 difference. So the next difference here should be 7. So what we have here is 28. Now this, although this seems easy, I added it in this part because there's actually a special name for this. These are also called as the triangular numbers. So how are they related to triangles? Let me erase everything first. Okay, so let's say we want to form a triangle by creating some dots. So this one is a triangle with a side length equal to 0. So there's basically just one dot. Now if I want to have a triangle with side length equal to 1, then I will have here 3 dots. So that's, um, imagine that each line there, each edge is equal to, let's say 1 centimeter or 1 inch. Now, if I want to make the side length equal to 2, I can add another layer. So this is the original triangle that we had, and then we added this here. So if we get the length here, so this is 2, this is 2, and this is 2. And you will notice that the number of dots that we have is equal to 6. Now, if we add another layer, or if we want to make the side length equal to 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is now our triangle with side length equal to 3, and the number of dots that we have here is equal to 10. And then we have again, we add another layer. So what we want to have now is a triangle of side length equal to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you will count all of the dots, we have here 15. And so inductively, we can say that the next one will be 21, and after that, so again, we will have 28. So you can try it yourself. Try creating the triangle with an increasing side length, and you will see that the number of dots will follow this sequence. So these are called, again, the triangular numbers, and there is actually a formula that we can use to find how many dots are there in an nth triangle. So the first triangle will have 1 dot, the second triangle has 3 dots, third triangle has 6 dots, and so on. So our formula there, the nth triangle, the number of dots in the nth triangle, or the nth triangular number, is equal to n times n plus 1 divided by 2. So you can check this rule if our n is 1, so basically the first triangle, so that's 1 times 1 plus 1 divided by 2, that's equal to 1. If our n is equal to 2, so that's 2 times 2 plus 1 divided by 2, so that's equal to 3. If our n is 3, then you would have 3 times 3 plus 1 over 2, so this is equal to 6. So that's 3 times 4, 12 divided by 2, so 6, and so on. So we have this formula. So earlier, the Fibonacci sequence and the Narayana-Scow sequence, what we had were what we call the recursive formulas. Basically, you have to know what comes before so that you can get what comes after. But this time with the triangular numbers, it's an explicit formula, so you don't need to know what comes prior. You can immediately solve for the nth number just by using the formula. So if you want to know what is the 10th triangular number, so what you do is do 10 times 10 plus 1 over 2. So this is 5 times 11. So that is 55. So the 10th triangular number is 55. All right, so let's now have our next sequence. 2, 4, 5, 10, 11, 22, 23, 46, 47. So you can try using the differences. So if we have 4 minus 2, that's 2. 5 minus 4, that's 1. 10 minus 5 is 5. 11 minus 10 is 1. 22 minus 11 is 11. 23 minus 22, that's 1. 46 minus 23 is 23. 47 minus 46 is 1. So what we have is 2, 1, 5, 1, 11, 1, 23, 1. So there is a repetition of ones. And then what do we have here? We have 2, which is this number, 5, which is this number, 11, which is that, 23, which is that. So what we expect in here, what comes next will be, the difference will be 47. So what we do, 47 plus 47, then what we should have is 94. So that is by using a difference. Now you can also look by doing progressions. So if you do progressions here to go from 2 to 4, moving from 2 to 4, you need to multiply by 2. Going from 4 to 5, you just add 1. From 5 to 10, you do times 2. From 10 to 11, you do plus 1. 11 to 22 is times 2. 22 to 23 is plus 1. 23 to 46 again is times 2. This one is plus 1. So what we should expect, we need to multiply this by 2. So again, if we do times 2 for 47 times 2, then we would also get 94. So what I've shown you here is that there is more than one way that you can find the same answer. All right, so now let's move away from numbers and let's go to images. So let's say we are given these sequence of images from the top, and we want to find the next image from, and the sequence of images that we have in the bottom are the choices. So let's just say these are choices A, B, C, D, and E. So which one here should come next? All right, so let's look at our figures. So we have from the first going to the second, let's look at the relationship, what changed. So we had the heart here, and then in the second image, the heart became like this. And this sort of like the stop sign became like this. So what's the relationship of this heart and this heart? They look like mirror images of each other, and that seems to be true for this part and or this shape and this other shape. So they look like mirror images of each other. Now going from the second to the third, the position of the heart and the stop sign did not change, but what changed is that we were given a different shape. Okay. Now going from the third to the fourth, what we see is there is again a flipping or a mirror imaging of the third image or of the third figure. So the heart went back to this position, the stop sign went back to this position, and then the crescent here is the mirror image of the one that is in the third figure. Now going from the fourth to the fifth, this 3 did not change, so we had a new figure introduced here, or a new shape introduced, a parallelogram. So now what would happen in the sixth? So in the sixth, what we should expect is that it will be a mirror image of the fifth. So which one here is the mirror image of the fifth? So we can just do some process of elimination. Let's have first what's the mirror image of the parallelogram. So the parallelogram is on the left, so the mirror image should be on the right. Now the mirror image, it's not A, it's not B, and D is also eliminated because it should be on the right. So these are the mirror images. So if it's like this, then its mirror image should be like this. So that's either C or E. Now, which among C or E do we choose? So the other image on the top is the stop sign. So the one on the top should also be a stop sign. So we have this. Now letter E, what we have is a heart. So that is not, we would also eliminate E from our choices. So C remains. Now let's just make sure that C is really a good choice. So let's look at the other shapes. So we have here the crescent. The crescent is still a mirror image of the one on the fifth, and then the heart is also again a mirror image. So yes, C is indeed the correct answer as the figure that comes next after the sequence. All right, so we now have a sequence here that we are not looking for what comes next, but what is basically missing in the middle. So recall what I said earlier, that we will form a conjecture, a rule that is being followed by the other images that we have, and that same rule should also be applicable to the figure that is missing. Okay, so let us observe the difference between the first and the second image. So we have here triangles and triangles. So we have here 4 triangles on the top. We still also have 4 triangles on the top, and then 3 triangles in the bottom. We also have 3 triangles in the bottom. Now what seemed to change here is that what I noticed is that this triangle here seems to have been moved here to the beginning. So if you do that, if you transfer this to the beginning, you will get the same exact thing in the middle. Now I will confirm this hypothesis, if this is true, by looking at the fourth and fifth figures. So in the fourth figure, the rightmost triangle is here in the bottom. So if I transfer it here to the beginning or to the left side, then we would get exactly the fifth figure. It's just like everything is keeps on moving to the right. So that rule should also be applicable if we are going from the second to the third, and also from the third to the fourth. So on the second part, or in the second image, so our rightmost triangle is here on the top. So what you would expect, this would get transferred here to the beginning, and we should have a triangle here. So our choices here is that we would have 3 triangles on the top. So that's if we would name this as A, B, C, D, and E. So that would leave us with either B or D. However, what we have here is after the 3 triangles, we would have 1 down, 1 up, 1 down, and another 1 down. And that's only D, which fits the bill. However, again, we need to confirm if our conjecture, if our hypothesis is correct. So we need also to check, if I transfer the rightmost triangle here, will I get the one on the fourth? And the answer is yes. So if we transfer it here, it will go to the bottom, and this will be gone, and that is exactly the fourth. So that confirms that our choice of letter D is the missing image in our sequence. Alright, so what we now have is a sequence of images again, and these images have inscriptions in them. So the first one is XFJ, then we have YGJ, and then XGK. So basically what's asking here, what should be the inscription, or what should be the letters that would fit this figure that we have? What are the 3 letters for this? Alright, so if we look at the letters, we have X in here and then X in here. And what's common between the first and the third image is that they are upright pentagons. In contrast with the second one, which is the letter Y, this is an upside down pentagon. So we have our first conjecture that the letter X would indicate that the pentagon that we have should be upright, and that the letter Y would mean that it is upside down or inverted pentagon. Now let's look at the next letter. So the one that we have in common is G. So the second and the third image here have the letter G, and what they have in common that is not found on the first image is that the let's say this is a roof, looks like a house anyway. So the roof here is not shaded, whereas the letter F in here has a shaded roof. Now we look at the third letter, so we have J here and we also have J in here, and what's common between the first and the second is that there's only one diagonal line in the pentagon, while this one, the letter K here, would probably mean that there should be two diagonals inside the pentagon. So with those rules in mind, let us now find what letter should be in this fourth figure. Okay, firstly, the pentagon here is upside down. So again, as we mentioned, X means that the pentagon is upright, and then Y must be upside down. So this one would have the letter Y. Then next, the roof here is not shaded, so that would give us the letter G. And finally, there are two diagonal lines of this, so this one would give us the letter K. So this figure should have Y, G, K. Inductive reasoning can also be used when we are trying to decipher words in a foreign language. The example that I have here is a made-up language. So suppose we know the translation of four phrases, which are as follows. The phrase "Su pan mule" is translated as "open the red door." Then "Su pan ruka" is translated as "close the blue door." The phrase "To pan rule" is translated as "close the red window," and finally the phrase "To pan muka" is translated as "open the blue window." So suppose we are now presented with a new phrase, "So pan muka." So we want to get the translation of this, so we can use our inductive reasoning. So first, the word "su" is found in the first and second phrases, and what we see common between the first and second phrases is door. So we would be able to conjecture that the translation of the word "su" is door. Next, "panmu." So "panmu" is present in the first and fourth phrases, and what we have common between the first and fourth phrases is the word "open." And finally, we want to get the translation of "ka." So "ka" is present in the second and the fourth phrases, and what's common between the two is the term "blue." So of course, we would not translate that as "door open blue." We would apply our proper English grammar. So the phrase "Su pan muka" would be translated as "open the blue door." So in here, again, we have used our inductive reasoning so that we can get a translation of a foreign language. So as I mentioned in the introduction, we are always using inductive and deductive um, processes of thinking when we want to decipher things. So I hope you have had realizations that you've been doing inductive and deductive reasoning, and hope that you would be applying them correctly. So that ends our second lesson. Have a good day.